Hello everybody, today I'm going to be talking about The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which is directed by Spike Lee. Spike Lee is beloved in some film circles, and in others he's considered quite notorious. I personally really love him, and I've said that before. I know that for some people he can come on a little bit too strong, but I think I love his very brash, hip-hop infused style, and I love his social commentary. He can be hit or miss sometimes, but when he's on, he is spectacular. I love Do the Right Thing. I think that's one of the best films, if not the best film, or at least my favorite of the 90s. And 25th Hour, I mean, that's one of my all-time favorite movies. I put it like in my top 10. When Spike Lee talked about this particular movie, he described it as a different kind of filmmaking, and the plot of the movie, I'm not kidding, is it's about a really rich anthropologist who is stabbed multiple times by his assistant, but he doesn't die. He wakes up without a scratch on him, but he becomes addicted to blood because of it. But he's not a vampire. Spike makes that very clear that he is not a vampire, he's just addicted to blood. So he goes around murdering people and drinking their blood to survive. Spike Lee said that it is a horror film, but it's also a very complex love story. I personally would just say that it's a blaxploitation film. That's how I would at least sell it to people. It's got that same kind of bad acting, the bad editing, that kind of soap opera, schlocky grindhouse era 1970s quality to it. And actually the movie is based on a film from the 70s, a movie called Ganja and Hess, which I have never seen, but I mean, based on just what I've seen, with this film, I'm very mixed on it. It's kind of hard for me to talk about. I wasn't really sure how to approach this review. I mean, it is a very different type of film, as Spike Lee said, and I admire that. I love it when people are trying to, think outside the box. But it's so muddled and it very mixed in tone, and not in an interesting way, in just a very blotchy way. Maybe that's a better word. A lot of things don't make sense in it, and there's a lot of things that I felt were kind of gratuitous, but there are other moments in it that I found were very profound, and I, had a lot of questions about it. I mean, questions that were very thought-provoking, and I thought that certain images in it and certain scenes had a lot of power and meaning. I actually, despite my issues with it, I liked it. I like the fact that Spike is not a one-dimensional director. Whether you like his films or not, he's not just trying to entertain you, and he's not just trying to make some political statement. It's a mix of all of that. It's the art and the commentary that he's able to blend in such a unique way, and with such bravura. I get a real high when I watch his movies. I like the fact that he's using this cheap 1970s style in order to blur the lines between what's gratuitous and entertaining and what's really meaningful. It actually reminded me a lot of Tarantino films like Django Unchained. And I think the idea here, at least on the surface, is that he's giving us a depiction of human nature as seen through the eyes of an African American. And it does have a lot of African history and symbolism used throughout the film, but I think just at the heart of it, underneath all that, it's just a human story about society, and that no matter how much we try to pretend that we're this very sophisticated culture and society, we can never repress those animalistic needs within us. All that lust and violence and materialism is always going to be there at our core. We actually see a lot of these ideas that are actually, thought about from multiple angles, and we see this stuff through metaphors of religion. And when I look at the religion, I think, it could be associated with guilt, but there's also a lot of intrigue and power in it. The addiction to blood is this metaphor for addictions to drugs and alcohol, materialism and violence. And despite the messiness of the film, I like that Spike is really trying to tackle all these very ambitious ideas. And they're all ideas, yes, we've seen religion and violence a million times in movies, but with Spike Lee, you always know you're going to get something very personal, and he has a very signature style, which I think is cool. And I actually really thought that the love story was somewhat interesting, more than I thought I would. The woman who plays Ganja, I wish I had that name, she was fantastic. She was able to really capture that melodramatic quality that the film has, but yet she also gave the character a lot of dimension, whereas I felt like the guy who played Hess didn't. He had this very wooden quality, and I understand that that's the point, but I think that when you're having two main characters, something else needs to be brought forth, and I think she really captured that. She captured this woman who's very single-minded and kind of despicable in a lot of ways, but there was a real strength and honesty and that she brought to it, and it was just a very striking performance. And I also thought that there were a lot of images and sequences that really stuck with me and left me with a lot to ponder. Whether you like it or you hate it, there's a lot to argue about with this movie. Now, all of that being said, the film has a lot of issues. I wish that it had tried to explore the concepts that it tried to tackle with a lot more substance. I mean, we keep seeing all of these points that Spike's trying to make about culture, human nature, addiction, etc. But all of these ideas are very jumbled, which makes the intent of it seem very unclear to the audience member, at least in an initial viewing. And also the editing in the film was just very perplexing to me, and there are a lot of parts of the plot that didn't make sense, that were very unclear, and I'm not sure whether or not that was the intent, because I understand that he's obviously going for this very melodramatic B-movie style, but regardless of that intent, it makes things seem unfinished and second rate, and not in a cheeky way, just in a way that just seems kind of bad. There's just no cohesiveness at all. It's very, as I said before, it seems very blotchy and very tangled in a heap. But still, after having said all that, I know I keep going back and forth here, I know that the more I think about the movie, the more problems I have with it, yet those moments of real power and profundity keep sticking out to me. There's just a lot to take away from it in a very off-kilter sort of way. I would say that if you are a Spike Lee fan, I would say like maybe a die-hard Spike Lee fan, or just somebody that's very intrigued by different ideas and film, if you're a cinephile, I think that this is actually worth checking out, because I would love to hear other people's opinions on it, because not that many people have seen it, I don't think. So even though I'm saying with this review I like it, but I didn't like it, but there's some things that are good, some things that are really bad, it's a mixed review, but ultimately I'm going to recommend it. But anyway, that is my kind of strange review for this movie. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and you can also like my Facebook page in the link below that. And catch you next time.